For an executive summary on what this call is going to entail, we are going to start out by highlighting one of the new pathways built by CryptoEcon Lab. It's an AutoCap bot. It's built, it's in testing, and what this allows to do is DataCap based on on-chain activity. So on the call, we'll be showing the links as well as highlighting what that will do. And immediately follow, we'll wrap up with an answer to a question was, what is required in terms of FIPS for products that are being built on the Filecoin Plus network? So if you're curious to learn more about what would be required for a pathway building tooling, when it needs a FIP, when it doesn't, we will answer that next. Followed by a tooling summary of the work built by Fiddle. Fiddle has revamped their website to include a resource of documentation, everything from the measurement tools to the DataCap stats, with a summary as well as links. So we'll be showing you where to get that information. Followed by how is the transition to Spark to RPA working? Let's pull back in that process, and we'll highlight a little bit about the whitelisting and some of the metrics that you could follow as an allocator in the program. We'll transition the call to SLAs. We've talked about roadmaps from Q4 to Q1, and in Q1, the new roadmap was entailing 25% of allocator transactions for public open data should include a form of payment. Enterprise payment should be at 100%. This is meant to be a check-in on those metrics. Are they working? Do you have any questions? Would you like a discussion? As well as highlighting where those numbers are coming from and how to leave feedback. Next, we'll flow into the DataCap refresh. Anybody who has questions on their application is more than welcome to join the call. We'll talk about the three that are going through and how those are taking place, as well as a little bit of a transactional overview. If you are doing proof of payment, what should you be looking at and what should you be sharing with clients, allocators, and storage providers as a community to make sure that those transactions are logged effectively and in that public record domain. As always, if there's any topics that you'd like to see on this call, we have two calls. The agenda is always posted 2 weeks in advance. So if you're watching this call, feel free to add a line item to any issue coming up in the future. To do that, just please see the Allocator governance repo. You'll see a new meeting created by me. Feel free to leave a question, a comment, or anything you'd like to see discussed. This call is March 3rd. The next call will take place on March 17th. And as far as data goes, previously we had highlighted the Pulse DataCap for all of the transactions that are going forward. That site is going to be sunset in favor of a lot of the new developments that you'll now see in DataCap stats. Looking at this page, we're looking at monthly stats. We're looking at the alerts. We're looking at compliant allocators. We're looking at active clients. So over this period, we've seen 52 active clients come on board since February, and they're being served by about 20 allocators right now. And this is a good call out. In the program, we've talked about having around 100 plus active allocator pathways. We've seen that number kind of consolidate around 20. So thank you to the 20 active allocators. If you have any questions on the DataCap refresh or how any of the SLA metrics work, love to answer those for you on the call. But what we're looking at is we've gone from 93 total approved allocators to around 20 that are making these DataCap distributions week over week highlighted in this chart. Hey, highlighting the CryptoEcon Lab AutoCap bot. If you follow the Slack channel of Phil Plus, you might have seen this highlighted by Luca and the team. What they've built is an automation. And what that automation does for the Phil Plus program is that they can list a burn address and the participant DataCap address. And this enables participants to receive that DataCap based off an automated system. The reason why we're highlighting this and just making sure that this is on a higher level of awareness for everybody is this is what the program is really hoping to see. For the past probably 18 to 24 months, a lot of the reviews from clients requesting DataCap has been in the form of a manual review, which has been fine, but as we try to scale the program and move into a more automated system that requires less humans in the loop, this is a great example of how allocators can develop their own tooling to make a pathway that works without having to have that manual diligence review. So if you see here, what steps take place is by providing a burn address and connecting that to a Filecoin compatible wallet. That wallet will then track the activity by round, and then that AutoCap will only go to eligible fill burn through that address that takes place. So this was posted in great detail by Luca. There's 3 stages on testing taking place if you'd like to give it a try yourself. And with this, there were some questions that came up from the community as far as Well, is this fundamentally changing the Fill Plus program? And does this require a FIP because of those changes? So in addition to highlighting that, I wanted to take a moment just to kind of discuss how that FIP process plays in and what we're seeing. The question, should automated pathways have to submit a FIP, or is there any kind of change to the protocol that takes place by having a tooling like this implemented? Well, to answer, the tooling that's built is totally optional. It's not required to be used. Clients don't have to use that pathway, nor do storage providers. So what the Filecoin Plus governance layer is it's meant to sit on top for the protocol. And what that designs is like how the DataCap is distributed, what toolings they can build, and allocators have total autonomy in that process. So as an allocator, you have autonomy in the points listed, how you distribute the DataCap, what compliance signals you're collecting, what tooling that you're using to do that, and your implementation of how you use smart contracts. The only time that a FIP would come into play is if there was a fundamental change to how the allocator or the community or the program wanted to see things like the DataCap minting on the L1 level. Now, the AutoCap doesn't do that, so it doesn't require a FIP. The second was minting exclusively to a protocol actor. And again, the way that this tooling is working specifically to the CryptoEcon lab, it's not taking part on that exclusive protocol actor. And the third, if the burn mechanics fundamentally alter the protocol level again. Now, the burn mechanics on the AutoCap bot are specific to the pledge for the DataCap that's received. So it's not changing the overall infrastructure. Now, in relation to the Fill AutoCap bot, that's an allocator level experiment. It's fully funded by ProPGF. It's not adding or changing any other pathways. It's not a protocol change. So for that, it should not require a FIP. It's just an experiment that they are running to try to make an automated pathway to match clients with storage providers for their data storage needs. If you want to dig into this or have more discussions, feel free to use the comment in this governance slide, or we can keep the conversation going in Slack as we go forward. Tooling. A lot of great updates on tooling coming back over the break. So the first off that you might see is the Filecoin Incentive Design Lab, Fiddle, has retooled their website. And what's nice about some of the updates that they've shared is under the documentation, they've broken it down by topic. And what this is allowed to do is real simple grabs on information that you might be looking for. Everything from how does the data and DataCap stats get populated to how do you configure your smart contract for the first time. So what's nice about this page is it's really customizable and set up for the program, specifically allocators that are looking for tooling questions or contract questions, as well as new community participants that are first getting started and finding the GitHub repository, reviewing Slack, another good resource for you to come through and see what else is out there. So if you haven't seen it already, the Fiddle website has a great resource of documentation. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of it, and we have it posted in Slack as well. The transition for retrievability. We've talked a lot about migrating away from Spark to RPA, and we've kind of completed that process and it's now live. So on the last call, we talked about this during February 3rd. So I just wanted to revisit this after the holiday break to make sure that it was fresh and that it was on everyone's radar. So what the RPA is, it's a random piece availability test. And what it's doing is it's not replicating and not changing everything across the network. But what it's doing is getting that endpoint discovery. So what this means is when this RPA test goes out, it measures if it's getting a retrievable signal coming back. So you can see how the service works from the async jobs to the direct calls that come back. And this is designed to tell us, hey, if the data that we say is public, open, and retrievable, is it? And that's what this RPA call is designed to do. So when this is going forward, you'll see this measured in a few places. The first is you're going to see this on the audits that take place for a DataCap refresh. So if an allocator is working with a client and that storage provider is going to be storing that as public, open, retrievable, what the RPA should be allowed to do and designed to do is go test and see if they can actually reach that. So it evaluates, hey, what was the size of the data? Measures the time to first byte, and it measures the head response, the THDR or TTHR, I should say. You'll see all of these metrics located in the DataCap stats page, and we have a screenshot there. We pull these metrics when we're doing a review of an allocator for distributing the DataCap. So if you as an allocator are giving DataCap to a client and a storage provider is storing that data, but you're seeing that none of that data is open and retrievable and able to be reached, well, then that's an issue. And as an allocator, it's the responsibility of that allocator to say, hey, I'm not seeing this data open and retrievable by these RPA charts. We need to have a discussion, or I cannot allocate you more DataCap. Now, a call out. For this week, RPA will become indistinguishable from regular client requests. This was some feedback that we received about ownership, burdens that were coming back. It's all been eliminated. And what this whitelisting will do is it will not result in a positive IPA score. So just because we're whitelisting will not result in a positive score. So feel free to ask any questions in Slack if you still have questions on the RPA system. DataCap Stats is a great source for pulling the metrics going forward. On the Fiddle source page, they have a lot of documentation on how this RPA is working. So if you have questions about setting this up or checking whether you're a storage provider or an allocator, it's a great way to stay connected on how is that retrievability being checked. And the reason why we pull these in is every allocator in DataCap Stats now has a score. And that score is based along how well you were distributing the DataCap per how you said you would. And these scores are based on several metrics. They could be reporting, they could be retrievability, they could be the response and openness. So these leaderboard scores play a large part. And when we look at 93 pathways that are in the program, if we're seeing 20 that are making quality distributions on that, we're able to assign a numerical score to those allocators so they can see how they rank against others. This is going to play a part in how we distribute DataCap refreshes going forward. So if a pathway has no retrievability, has a very low allocator score based off their performance metrics, they will eventually become not eligible for DataCap renewal. So we've been soliciting feedback. Do these scores make sense? Do these weights make sense? And to see any of these weights inside of DataCap Stats, you can click on the explain, and then that will highlight essentially where all the weights are coming from for that leaderboard score. So again, these leaderboard scores on weights will play a large part coming forward in how a pathway is designated compliant, non-compliant, and eligible for future DataCap refresh. So there's also been updates to the application template. What's nice about this is, it looks like my slide got cut. You could, when you're applying, you have the DataCap application template. You now have a section where they can designate, this is the client, what type of data they wanted it to be. Enterprise, public open, all the metrics that go forward. And what's great for you, if you're an allocator doing this, is that you can then see from your client's perspective, hey, I see that you were looking for these specific metrics, and the SP agreed to meet these metrics. It's your role as the allocator to say, okay, I'm going to give you the DataCap for this deal because I see that being met. But if you don't see those deal metrics being met, you as the allocator can step in and say, I'm no longer going to refresh, or I'm no longer going to grant DataCap to you because you have not met the requirements that the client was asking for. So what this application template is designed to do is make it a little bit simpler for you as allocators to take an eye and see if the SPs and the clients are having that matchmaking that the client was setting out for. Essentially, is the SP giving the client what the client asked for? And you as the allocator can serve as that verification layer to make sure that's taking place. Hey, what's up with roadmaps and SLAs? So right now we're in the end of Q1 coming forward. So I want to do a look back as well as a look forward. When we talked about a roadmap in Q4 2025, a big focus was getting us to the place where we had verifiable payment types. And we'll talk about that on this call, and that we could pilot on-chain payments. So how do we see the transactions are actually being paid, and that can be recorded and have a public documentation for audit purposes. And then coming forward to this quarter, two of the big focuses that we had was that there was some type of SLA metrics that we could score. So that scoring system in DataCap Stats, as well as having some type of concrete weight to those payment proofs, and then being able to register those payments on chain. So I want to kind of talk about those and what they look like, and just make sure the community is tracking this roadmap and has a flow on where it goes forward. So when we look at Q1 in 2025, we have the old goals up there, and they were very high level. How do we verify storage providers? How do we verify downloadability? And this is what led to updates like the DataCap stat scoring system. This is what led to updates like the RPA tooling that we now have for retrievability. So coming into 2026, really drilling down into three main goals. And those goals are that the payments are verified on chain. Two, that there's some quality of service that's taking place and that's measurable and recordable. And three, moving to paid only deals. So in Q1, what we looked at is really focusing on what does that paid only deal look like? And that's what's in red that we've been highlighting here in Q1. Still looking for feedback as this kind of gets rolled out more and more, and you'll see this in DataCap refresh. If you were an enterprise client and you're storing private data with an enterprise client, that needs to have a payment associated with it. So if a client is coming to you having paid deals that they want to store privately that's non-retrievable, that should be 100% verified on-chain as payment. The second is that if you have a client that wants to store public open data, at least 25% of that in Q1 should have a payment associated with it. So as an allocator, if you're seeing these requests come back, if you're requesting a DataCap refresh in Q1 coming up for the next month, 25% of the public common data that's been onboarded should have a payment associated with it. 75% can be just open, no payment associated, but there should be 25%. What we're looking at is next call, we'll talk about how does this elevate going forward? What will it look like in Q2, Q3, Q4? And that will elevate. So going from 25% to 50% to 75% to eventually 100%, with the goal that the Filecoin Plus program is really facilitating quality data that benefits the network, the community, and the world. So what do those SLAs look like in 2026? We've talked about this just as a quick refresh again. For those three main categories we talked about, clients define their SLAs when they request the data. So as an allocator, you're looking to make sure that that client request was matched by the storage provider. So if it's public open data, it should be retrievable, right? And that's what the role of the allocator is to say, I made sure it was, and I verified it and put my own name as our pathway on it to verify this. The second is making sure that the clients are receiving quality for the data storage that they intended to get. So for this, we're measuring quality with that DataCap stat score, where we can look at all different metrics, retrievability, duplication, everything that's been defined, and really having an allocator look at these and say, great, I'm allocating DataCap to these individuals. This is the result of that work done. And the third is the shift to move to paid only deals. So we talked about this, and just to kind of restamp, in Q1, all enterprise deals should have 100% payments associated with those paid deals. Public commons data is at 25%. And so as the time goes on, we should see proof of payment slowly increase throughout the year until the Filecoin Plus program is operating with this paid only deal model going forward. So if you have questions on this, we have a couple discussions open in GitHub. Feel free to leave comments on these slides and the agenda. Love to get your input on the metrics. Love to get your input on the roadmaps that's going forward and making sure that we're hitting the highlights that are relevant to you. As always, we talk about what the role of an allocator is. We keep this on all slides just so that it's top of mind for anybody who's new or coming back after a break. It's that you should be having an allocation tranche. So not all of your data cap is going out to one client at one time, and it should be clearly defined how that schedule is following. The data should be split up across geographic regions. If you have not used your data cap after a period of time, we may sunset your pathway and encourage you to reapply. Either we need additional pathways that are doing that, or you're ready to step back in. And we'll talk about that more in April as we look at sunsetting some of the other allocations. And then proof of payment is a big one coming forward for the allocator requirements. Making sure that, again, 100% of the enterprise deals have a DC, should be on chain, and that for the public open data sets, 25% at this time, and we'll see that go up. DataCap refresh. So one of the big call outs on this one is if you were an allocator around back about a year ago in the program, you had to wait sometimes on average 38 days from the time that you requested a DataCap refresh to when that refresh was reviewed, audited, and distributed back to you. So we put a lot of work into this process, and a lot of props to Amin at the Filecoin Foundation for really spearheading this effort. And that number has dropped from a high of 38 to now drastically under 10 days. And a big thank you to you as allocators that have really made that process smooth. You're understanding what the rules are for the program, making sure that clients and SPs are aware of it. That's gone a long way. We pushed out a discussion, GitHub issue 501, and what this GitHub issue is designed to do is just talk about that guidance for 2026. So what does verifying storage performance look like? How do you review client reports? What's the best way to document those reports? And again, looking back at more 2026, how are we looking at a shift towards paid deals and where that comes forward? So again, this discussion is live in GitHub if you have any questions or want to see more details and rules about the program. But essentially, it's designed that we're facilitating high quality data that benefits the Filecoin's ecosystem overall. So thank you for all you allocators. YMHB, you're currently in the refresh pipeline if you haven't seen it already for a refresh on your third review for 5 petabytes. And between the calls, we've topped off 2 of the enterprise pathways that are used to distribute it. So the ORMA goes for the experimental pathways, large enterprise deals that are doing distributed data, as well as the MDMA. So we cut down the time rather than having to wait for a root key holder signature for every distribution. That MDMA holds a pot, and then that can distribute it to the allocators, and that's what's responsible for really driving that wait time down from 38 days to less than 10. Now, for DataCap, we talked a lot on the call about how proof of payment plays a large part. So in 2026, this is just a check-in slide from some of the information that you'll see in the GitHub descriptions on how do you check and how do you verify proof of payments. Amin, I see you're on the call, so feel free to jump in, to talk over me at any time. I'd love to get your take on this too. But essentially what you can see is 2 categories that are split up. On the left is the on-chain transaction audit, and on the right is the off-chain transaction audit. So ideally, what we're going to be looking to see is many more of these move to on-chain. So that means you as an allocator, when you're submitting this DataCap refresh, you should be able to provide things like the wallet address received the funds and a description. So like a brief contract, like XYZ storage provider received X number of dollars fill token from X client, and then there's a contract that specifies it. So when you submit that DataCap refresh, that will be set up for the audit that takes place to make sure that that was legit. So we'll want to see the confirmation of payment. Is this a one-time payment, or will there be a frequency going forward, like a payment plan? And the counterparty wallet to show that the funds were sent and the funds were received. Now, less likely if it's off contract, and this is kind of reminiscent of a lot of the manual, if you have a contract but no on-chain payment, which we're slowly moving away from. This means that you should have some type of contract where X client pays Y storage provider that the allocator can review, and that contract spells out, you will store this data for this period of time at this payment rate, and then that contract can be shared with the team that's reviewing these applications to make sure that the data was stored per the contract. And so what's audited in those off-chain contracts is, did the payment really occur? Was it a real business? What was the tie-in for the business? What was the unique ID? And you can see with this second category, this is a lot more of a manual process. It's more open, it's more paper. And as we're looking to have this decentralized system, this really encouraging storage, this is kind of a legacy way to do it. And so with the advantations of smart contracts, with these payment protocols, we're really moving forward to this on-chain transaction audit. So we'll keep talking about this. We'll make sure that you have resources for any questions. If you're an allocator, client, or SP on how you can show those transactions going forward. But as far as proof of payment, this is a great way to start thinking about that in the year 2026. Amin.
Thanks for the recap, Kevin. I feel like a lot of teams have been able to comply thus far, being able to provide sufficient probing elements. I just want to keep for the records that we're not expecting to add a lot of overhead to teams when we mention that teams must provide. And we're obviously giving different examples. We're not looking to have, the full payment trail from A to Z, but the intent is to make sure that we can draw the line between DataCap allocation and client relationship and the day-to-day activity of running the allocator is. So the intent is to make sure that we can also work with the teams and that we can have candid conversations around understanding the business context that may be different from a team to another team.
So just wanted to check in again on any organization that was interested in becoming an allocator in the program. We kind of made the call in years past during an open enrollment. Right now, it's currently open at any time. With the caveat that you might have seen, we have 90 active allocator pathways. Most of those are doing manual reviews. So the benefits to the network, to the clients, is not added by adding additional manual reviews that are going through. So anyone is welcome to apply at any time, apply at allocator.tech, but with the note that if we are getting an application for just another manual pathway that receives those, there's no advantageous for the client, and it actually slows the network down for the reviewers, for the auditors, for the onboarding. So at this time, since we have so many of those, we're putting a hold and saying if you are building a market, if you're building a tooling system like the AutoCap bot, love to see it, love to have you work with it if you're coming by on that. So as a friendly reminder, you can reply at any time, but we're holding manual allocation pathways at a time in which they're needed, which is not right now. So with that, I'll pause and I'll see if anybody wants to dive any topics that we've kind of summarized on this call taking place over the last month, or there was any new things that you guys might want to discuss. The floor is yours. I'd like to thank you all for coming or watching this on YouTube. The second call will be taking place tonight at 0200 UTC. You have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.